Bertolt Brecht. Bertolt Brecht was a German practitioner of drama, director, and I think probably also a performer to a certain degree. And what Bertolt Brecht did was he created a system of acting. He wanted his audiences to think about the issues that were in his plays. He didn't want them to just watch the story, become involved in the story, and forget about what the messages of the performance were. He was more interested in the message of the performance than he was in the plot of the performance itself, or in the actors' performances. He wanted people to question, he wanted people to query, he wanted people to challenge ideas. He created a series of elements to his performances that he directed, and he created what he considered to be a new kind of theatre called epic theatre. And he wanted that to be very different to the type of theatre that already existed. So one of the things he wanted to do was he wanted to take things that are usual, things that we understand, and he wanted to make them seem unusual by the way they were performed. So he would try to create something that would cause people to question. Now this technique, this idea of taking something that is usual and making it seem unusual, he called the Verfremdungseffekt. He also did something which we call breaking the fourth wall. If you imagine a stage as a box, one wall on the left, one wall on the right, one wall behind you, and one wall in front, to break down that fourth wall, when we watch plays, what we tend to do is we look through the imaginary fourth wall as though we are observing something that's happening. So what he did with his performers, he would sometimes get them to break down the fourth wall by talking in character directly to the audience. So for example, they might be in a scene and all of a sudden they would talk around to the audience in character and say, well, what do you think of that situation then? This was one of his ways of creating this epic theatre which caused people to think. In addition, he created something called montage. So montage is where instead of getting your understanding of something through one thing that you see in front of you, he would put a series of images or ideas in front of you so that you could pick out some meaning from that. I'll give you an example. If you see a series of attractive women walking down a sort of a model's gangway, and one is dragging a packet of bacon on a piece of string. If another one has a fur coat that is bleeding and the blood is dripping on the floor. If another one is wearing a hat made at the eyeballs of dead sheep, well, it's a montage of images, but those images are designed to give you an understanding. And what might you get from that? Well, I suppose meat is murder. I suppose really there, and it could be that this is something that's trying to raise your awareness about what human beings do to animals in order to satisfy their own needs, and it's obviously an anti, so it's maybe vegetarianism or an anti-blood sports or anti-animals, anti-destruction of animals, whatever, it might be something like that. Another thing that Brecht would do is talking in third person. So for example, instead of me saying to camera now, I would like you to watch this video, if I talk in the third person, it would be, Mr. Whitehead would like you to watch this video, or Whitehead would like you to watch this video, so there's talking in the third person. He used a whole variety of different techniques like this to create that. He also would have his actors change costume on stage in front of the audience. And the idea behind that is because he wanted you always to understand that you were watching actors and these are not real people. Well, you might think, well, this is very silly because, everybody knows that these are actors. Well, yes and no. Because sometimes people who watch things like EastEnders, if there's a storyline where somebody's done something nasty to somebody else, those actors sometimes get shouted at in the street because the people that watch those programs sometimes don't make any kind of differentiation between it being an actor and a role played and real life. I once took some students to the theatre, and one actor was saying some unkind things to a woman on the stage, and at the interval one of the boys said to me, "I'm glad he stopped saying that, sir, because I was going to hit him." And I said, "But he's an actor just saying the lines." And he said, "But no man should say that to a woman." I said, "But he's an actor saying lines, it's not real." So this student wasn't understanding this is just an actor playing a role. He started to see this as real life. That's the opposite of what Brecht wanted. He wanted people to talk about what was happening on stage afterwards. He wanted them to question it. He wanted them to challenge what was happening. So placards, montage, speaking in the third person, which is the Verfremdungseffekt, which is to make something usual seem unusual. So these are some of the things that Brecht uses to create this understanding, to create an audience that doesn't just sit there and let. In another way, he sometimes uses narrators to tell you what the plot is, so you're not watching it and letting the plot unravel. You already know what the plot is. That means that you're more likely to be focusing on what's the message of the play is, rather than think about what's happening next. Also, there's this word gestus or gestus, in which he said that even if you don't understand the language, you should understand what is happening in the scene because of the way that people physically act and perform and respond to one another. So if an actor was using this physicality, the use of body language and gesture well, then you would automatically be able to understand what was happening. In addition to that, he said that plays should be made into episodes, and each episode should be totally understandable on its own and shouldn't require other episodes either in front of it or after it to help make sense of the whole thing. And all this, that it was all built to create this idea of his epic theatre. There are other techniques, other devices, other elements of it, but these are some of the main ones of Brecht's idea of an epic theatre, in which he wanted to create the Verfremdungseffekt, which is to help people understand something that is very normal, something that is usual, but then becomes unusual because something that happens as a result of the techniques of the director.